Avalanche Avax Price Prediction. How many AVAX to be a millionaire? Buy a coin at the top to expect ×2, or gather an asset at the bottom to open the opportunity to change lives ×10, even ×20 times? Currently, Avalanche is trading around $6 to $7, which is a drop of more than 95% from the historical peak of $147, causing the majority of the crowd to flee. But they do not know that right in June 2026, when AVAX prices are stomping in place, the largest tournament on the planet, FIFA World Cup 2026, is taking place, and the entire system of electronic tickets and digital membership cards of the tournament are running smoothly on the Avalanche custom chain. Not only that, the recently launched Avalanche 9000 upgrade helps cut up to 99% of transaction costs, turning this network into a magnet that attracts financial giants such as Citi and JP Morgan to pour billions of dollars into the RWA segment. The SEC's official approval of the AVAX Spot ETF earlier this year is the clearest evidence that smart money is quietly gathering goods. So the question is, given the cheap as-for status, what is AVAX's price target in this cycle, and exactly how much AVAX do you need to own right now to hit the $1 million mark? Join Crypto Radar in this video to find the answer. Crypto Radar. Looking at the price chart, AVAX has fallen from a historical peak of over $146 to around $6 to $7. For the majority of retail investors, this is a scary signal. They saw an asset drop by more than 95% and immediately concluded AVAX Coin is outdated. But for those who understand the market cycle, this is the area that needs to be watched the most, because in crypto, assets do not often create great opportunities when everyone is calling to buy. Great opportunities often appear at the stage when the market is depressed, liquidity is exhausted, the media is silent, and only those who really believe in the platform remain. Currently, AVAX Crypto is like a project coming out of the capitulation phase, that is, the period when weak investors have sold off most to enter the reaccumulation zone. AVAX price may not explode right away, even for a long time, but it is that sideways is what sets the foundation for a new growth cycle. Simply put, this is not the FOMO phase, it's the disbelief phase. The phase where the good news starts to emerge, the infrastructure starts to expand, the organization starts to pay attention, but the crowd still doesn't believe it. And that's why AVAX is so remarkable. Because while the price is still in historically low territory, Avalanche is not standing still. The network is moving from a low-cost, high-speed, competitive Layer 1 blockchain to an infrastructure for custom chains where businesses, financial institutions, games, RWAs, and even global brands can build their own blockchain on top of Avalanche. The biggest change lies in Avalanche 9000. This upgrade is not just a regular technical update, but a step that helps Avalanche drastically reduce the barriers to deploying its own Layer 1 blockchains. Previously, it was expensive and complicated for a large enterprise or project to build its own chain. But with Avalanche 9000, the cost of L1 deployment is cut almost to the maximum, paving the way for a series of custom blockchains to appear in the Avalanche ecosystem. In other words, AVAX is no longer just a story of a coin that soared last season. It is becoming an infrastructure story. And this is an extremely important point. In the previous cycle, AVAX soared because of the narrative Layer 1 boom. But in the new cycle, if AVAX wants to get back on track, the momentum doesn't just come from DeFi or memes, it could come from much larger arrays. Tokenized physical assets, blockchain games, payments, e-tickets, loyalty, and enterprise applications. The emergence of FIFA on the Avalanche infrastructure is a very notable example. When a global brand like FIFA uses Avalanche technology for its own blockchain system, it shows that Avalanche is not only talking about adoption, but has started to have real use cases at a mass scale. This is the difference between a blockchain that lives by expectations and a blockchain that begins to have real applications. However, it needs to be fair. AVAX has not entered a boom period. Prices are still weak, liquidity is not too strong, and market sentiment with altcoins is still very cautious. But that is why the story is so compelling. If AVAX has risen back to $50, $80, or $100, the chances of times 10, times 20 are almost no longer clear. But with prices still hovering around the lows, while infrastructure, ETFs, FIFA blockchain, Avalanche 9000, and RWA cash flows start to emerge, this could be the stage where smart investors start to question, is the market missing an asset that is likely to make a strong comeback in the 2026 cycle? So the short answer is this: Avalanche AVAX is currently in a phase of reaccumulation after the big crash. It's not a phase of warming up, it's not a phase of mass media coming back, but this may be a stage of foundation where prices are cheap, trust is low, but long-term catalysts are slowly emerging. And it is time to take a deeper look at the technical picture of Avalanche Crypto. Where is AVAX accumulating? How is cash flow reacting? What price points could trigger the next breakout? And more importantly, what are the catalysts that could turn AVAX Avalanche from a forgotten coin into one of the most remarkable growth opportunities of 2026? Let us analyze in detail in part 2. From a technical perspective, the $6 to $7 zone currently acts as a strong psychological support, while the $10 to $12 zone is the first important resistance. The fact that AVAX has repeatedly retested the $10 zone but has not been able to hold up shows that the market is missing a large enough volume breakout to change the trend phase. In previous cycles of Layer 1, it is the sideways phase that extends below this resistance that often accumulates the position of the institutional cash flow before a catalyst is strong enough to break the sideways structure, and that catalyst is no longer theoretical but has begun to take shape with real data. The first is the expansion of the Avalanche L1 model. After the Avalanche 9000 upgrade, the cost of deploying a private blockchain on Avalanche price analysis is significantly reduced compared to older architectures, causing the number of application subnets to increase rapidly in the RWA, gaming, and enterprise team. According to the 2026 ecosystem reports, the number of new L1 deployments on Avalanche has increased sharply compared to the previous stage of the upgrade, reflecting a clear trend. Avalanche is moving from a single chain, Layer 1, to a multi-chain infrastructure layer. The second is the growth of real-world assets. The total value of tokenized assets on Avalanche has approached approximately 2 billion TVL, with the participation of many financial institutions and experiments from large institutions in the field of digital assets. This is an extremely important point because RWAs are not short-term trend narratives, but long-term cash flows tied to traditional bonds, credit, and financial assets. The third factor is institutional onboarding through ETF/ETP products and structured funds. 2026 marks the first time AVAX appears in regulated exposure investment products in the US, opening up a cash flow channel that is no longer entirely dependent on retail crypto. Although the initial size is not large, the essence of ETF is to create long-term passive demand, which is completely different from short-term trading cash flow. When combining these three factors, L1 expansion, RWA growth, and institutional cash flow, Avalanche Coin begins to form a structure that is very characteristic of major crypto cycles. Price going ahead, adoption following, and narrative confirmation at the end. The key point here is that the current market has not yet fully valued those factors. This is evident in the fact that the AVAX cryptocurrency is still trading a lot lower than its previous peak, while the indicators of network activity and ecosystem cooperation have not collapsed respectively. So if the market does revalue Avalanche in the 2026 to 2027 cycle, how far can the AVAX price go? And more importantly, how much AVAX do you need to hold right now to stand a chance of hitting the $1 million mark? Looking at the long-term chart, AVAX technical analysis is in a very peculiar state. The market has gone through almost a full bear cycle lasting from the peak of 2021 to 2026, with the typical structure of a major altcoin following a hype cycle creating a strong peak followed by a series of lower highs and finally a liquidity compression zone extending around the bottom. But it is from this price range that the problem becomes very clear. If the market enters a new cycle, the level of increase is no longer an emotional story, but a simple calculation between the target price and the amount of AVAX to hold. Let's take a baseline. If AVAX returns to the historical peak of about $146, this is equivalent to more than 20 times increase from the $6 region. In this scenario, to reach the $1 million mark, you only need about 6,800 AVAX. At current prices, this amount of AVAX analysis is equivalent to about 45,000 US dollars of investment capital. This is why assets that have plummeted consistently create an asymmetric upside risk that has been discounted by the market, but the upside remains the same in the previous cycle. However, in the crypto market, there is rarely a single scenario. Prices never move in a straight line, and Avalanche Crypto Price Prediction is no exception. So, instead of just looking at a back to the top scenario, we need to look more broadly at the many different valuation areas that the market may re-establish in the next cycle. If Avalanche only rebounds to the mid-range peak around $50, this would still be a significant increase from the current level. In that case, to reach the $1 million target, you would need about 20,000 AVAX. If the market is stronger and AVAX returns to the $100 region, which is half of its historical peak, the holding will drop to about 10,000 AVAX. In a more basic scenario, if AVAX simply returns to its previous peak around $146, then you need about 6,800 AVAX to hit the $1 million mark. And in a more expansive scenario, where Avalanche not only rebounds, but actually becomes a critical infrastructure for the RWA, enterprise, and multi-chain ecosystem, if AVAX moves to the $200 region, then the $1 million target is only about 5,000 AVAX. But the most important thing is not these numbers, because the crypto market is not valuing assets based on the past, but on the story that it believes in the future. If Avalanche is only seen as a layer 1 of the old cycle, then it will continue to oscillate in the long-term sideways zone with short-term gains and then weakness. But if the market starts valuing Avalanche as an infrastructure layer for digital assets, enterprise subnets, games, and RWA cash flows, then the entire pricing structure will change. Looking at the current AVAX chart analysis, AVAX is in a compression zone where price volatility is low but pressure accumulates over time. This is usually the quietest phase of a cycle, but it is also the period before the market makes the strongest moves. Either a breakout goes up when cash flows come back, or a breakdown if there is no catalyst large enough to hold the confidence. So the key question is no longer how many percentage gains AVAX Coin analysis will make, but rather, in the 2026 to 2027 cycle, what valuation will the market assign to Avalanche? A project that has passed its peak, or a real infrastructure platform for the next generation of blockchain applications? And it's the answer to that question that determines the whole picture, whether you need 20,000 AVAX, 10,000 AVAX, or just 5,000 AVAX to hit the $1 million mark. Finally, Avalanche is not just a price chart, and it's not just the numbers that go up and down in the market cycle. It's a story of trust, of timing, and of how the market revalues the future. Maybe Avalanche coin price will never go back to its former peak, but it's also possible that this is the price zone that many people will look back on later. Why didn't I see this opportunity earlier? Because in crypto, the biggest opportunity doesn't come when everything is clear. It comes when everything is in doubt. So now I want to ask you a very real question. If AVAX enters a new growth cycle in 2026 to 2027, do you think it will stop at $50, $100, or even higher? And more importantly, if you believe in one of those scenarios, will you choose to stay out of the loop or start building your position right from here? Leave your thoughts below. If this video helps you get a better view of AVAX, leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the latest updates from Crypto Radar, where together we track the biggest opportunities in the crypto market. Thank you for watching all the videos. See you in the next video.